I would like to begin this morning by asking a question of myself and all of us gathered here this morning. Have you prayed lately? Have I prayed lately? Have we prayed lately? Now, I'm not talking about the often half-listening, distracted worship prayer that prays for you. I'm not talking about the informing God prayer in case God did not yet read the New York Times. I'm not talking about the I've tried everything else prayer so it wouldn't hurt prayer. I'm not talking about the mind-numbing, thoughtless, ritual mumbling prayer that we recite without engaging our spirit, as a child from Connecticut recently did, who thought he had memorized the Lord's Prayer and proudly recited, "Our Father who art in New Haven, how do you know my name?" No, I'm talking about prayer as described by Nobel Prize recipient scientist Dr. Alexis Carrel, a scientist who wrote these words, quote, "Prayer is the most powerful form of energy a human can generate. The influence of prayer on the mind and body is as demonstrable as a secreting gland. Its results can be measured in terms of increased buoyancy, greater intellectual vigor, moral stamina, and a deeper understanding of human relationships." I'm talking about prayer as it relates to one of our hymns in the United Methodist hymnal. And I want to read it to you. Most of our hymns in the hymnal are actually poems and prayers. But on page 492, there's a hymn entitled, "Prayer is the Soul's Sincere Desire." Listen. Prayer is the soul's sincere desire, unuttered or expressed. The motion of a hidden fire that trembles in the breast. Prayer is the burden of a sigh, the falling of a tear, the upward glancing of an eye when none but God is near. Prayer is the simplest form of speech that infant lips can try. Prayer, the sublimest strains that reach the majesty on high. Prayer is the contrite sinner's voice returning from their way, while angels in their songs rejoice and cry, "Behold," they pray. Prayer is the Christian's vital breath, the Christian's native air. Their watchword at the gates of death, they enter heaven with prayer. "O thou by whom we come to God, the life, the truth, the way, the path of prayer thyself has trod, Lord, teach us how to pray." Does that describe our prayer life? This morning, I'm speaking about being an Acts 12 praying church, where we just read moments ago that King Herod has killed James, the brother of John. Peter is in prison, and where do we find the church? Where's the church in all of that? Verse 5 said this, "The church was earnestly praying for him." I went to some other translations about this word earnestly. The Message puts it this way: the church was most strenuously praying. The King James Version says, the church was praying without ceasing. The Living Bible says the church was praying all the time. Now the word earnestly is also defined as sincerely, intently, seriously, and deeply. Friends, does that describe our prayer life? As the angel leads Peter out of prison and out of the city street, he makes his way to the home of Mary, the mother of John, and we read these words. Many people had gathered and were praying. They're still at it. They haven't stopped. They had prayed for Peter's freedom, and the answer to their prayer was knocking at the door. Then a servant girl named Rhoda sees Peter outside the door knocking, doesn't even answer the door. Instead, she runs to tell the others that Peter is here. Now listen to these words. Verse 16b. They were astonished. Is not that often a candid picture of our prayer life? We pray earnestly, and when the answer finally stands at our door, we're astonished. Because down deep, many times we have no real expectation of prayer. I want to share 2 principles of prayer that I came across months ago that I wanted to share with you at some time, and here we are. When I share these 2 principles, they may seem contradictory or almost exactly the same. I want to throw them out to you this morning to allow you to wrestle with them. And the first principle of prayer is this. Pray for what you have a right to expect. That's profound. Pray for what you have a right to expect. We have a right to pray for all those things that are consistent with the character of God. For example, a mother has a right to pray for strength and wisdom as she raises her children. A father has a right to pray for courage and integrity as he raises his children. A leader has a right to pray for understanding and humility. We all have the right to pray to overcome temptation. Our children have a right to pray to simply be loved or to have food to eat. We have the right to pray for all the marvelous possibilities that God is creating within us, because God was not merely the creator, God still is the creator. And we exercise this sacred privilege when we pray for those things that make us more forgiving, more filled with grace, more truthful, and more loving. Friends, there is an inexhaustible wealth of things to pray for when we simply pray, Thy will be done. The second principle says this. If we pray for what we have a right to expect, then expect what you have a right to pray for. If our prayers focus on our relationship with God and one another, please get this, then unbelievably our prayers are always answered. If we pray, if we focus on our relationship with God and with one another, our prayers are always answered. If our deepest yearning is to draw closer to God and to live within God's will, it is God's character to respond. I'm not sure God has a favorite sports team, folks. Or really gives a rip whether we win a lottery or not. But this is when prayer becomes an expectancy. When our prayers center on the will of God, we then can pray with wondrous expectations and buckle up for the ride. Our prayers then become a fulfillment of God's will and then we can pray with resolve and expectation. I end with this. I believe prayer is one of the greatest gifts God has given us. But let us never forget that it is by grace alone that we are offered this holy privilege. You see, the Creator is always creating in us a thirst and a desire to share in this creation. Might I ask that on this Memorial Day weekend, we as a community of faith this morning make a covenant. A covenant together to strive to become an Acts 12 praying church. People of faith who pray for those things consistent with God's character and attributes, and who pray earnestly, expecting God will not fail. Thanks be to God.